What happens when 4 filmmakers from 3 different countries decide to come together to turn a beloved Jane Austen classic into a modern rom-com? You're about to find out. Welcome to the story of Rational Creatures. There are also spoilers ahead from here on. We're going to be talking about adaptation choices and plot points and generally things that you might not want to hear about if you're planning to watch the series. Maybe pause this video and watch it now if you want to know everything that's going on. Oh, it's only like 2 hours. Oh wait. Done it? Yeah, you back? Great. Let's get cracking.
Inspired by Persuasion, Rational Creatures is a short-form series that follows Anna and Fred, our version of Anne and Wentworth, as they're thrown back into each other's lives after a heartbreaking split in high school several years ago. Intertwined with Anna and Fred's rekindled romance, you'll meet Ruiz, our version of Louisa Musgrove, his roommate Ben Wick, whose name might sound familiar, Fred's sister Sophie, based on Sophia Croft, who's getting her PhD in astrophysics, and Charlie and Marisol, our lesbian dog mom versions of Charles and Mary Musgrove.
We spent a long time developing the show, approximately 2 years. We crowdfunded for the show, we failed at crowdfunding for the show, we re-crowdfunded for the show, and eventually we were able to fully cast it, fully have the money for the first 5 episodes, and that is what we shot in the winter of 2019. And we shot season 2 a few years later due to the pandemic and some delays that came with that. We all met on the internet. We were all involved in the LIW Literary Inspired Web Series community, and we all ended up working on each other's shows in one way or another. So why did we adapt Persuasion into a queer rom-com series? Because we wanted to. We really wanted to tell a Jane Austen story the way she told them, about people around her and the society she lived in. So what better way to represent her work than to do that in the present day, where we live, where we as filmmakers can tell stories about the people around us and the society we live in. All 4 of us are big rom-com buffs. One of our favorites is Clueless, which does something similar to what we do with Persuasion. They take the core of the story in Emma and adapt it to the present day when the movie was made in the 90s. And we kind of like to do something similar with Persuasion. Although our tone is very different, the tone of Emma, the book, is very different to the tone of Persuasion. So we really wanted to take the heart of the novel and really put it in a setting that is a little bit more familiar to us.
And we can't really talk about inspirations without mentioning the Lizzie Bennet Diaries, which I'm sure all of you are familiar with. That really inspired a lot of people to make their own vlog-style web series, literary inspired specifically. And so Rational Creatures was kind of born from that tradition of the vlog-style web series. After creating several vlog-style series between us, we did want to stretch our creative muscles and try to do things in a new way, which is why we chose to do kind of more cinematic episodes rather than vlog style, although there are vlogs in our series.
We wanted to do a rom-com, or maybe more of a romantic dramedy, so we also drew on movies that were comedic but a bit more grounded in reality, like The Big Sick. But at the same time, we did work in some classic rom-com tropes, like having Fred eating ice cream and binging movies after a breakup, having a meet-cute gone wrong with a dog on the loose, and things like that.
Something we had to work out really early was how to adapt the theme of persuasion in the novel. In the book, Anne and Frederick's relationship doesn't work out for all sorts of reasons. A lot of those societal pressures which still carry on today. Obviously some things have also changed a little bit, so we had to work out why Anna and Fred broke up as teenagers. In the novel, the young Anne and Frederick are forced apart by class differences, Frederick not necessarily having the expectations Anne's family would have wanted, and just generally family pressure and snobbishness. We used some of this, but obviously had to make some changes to move everything to the 21st century. Our version doesn't really have a Lady Russell figure, although we did nod to her in the names of Lady and Russell, Charlie and Marisol's dogs, who we'll talk about a little bit more later.
Well, I think the societal pressures in Jane Austen's era are kind of personified by Lady Russell. We did it a little differently. We wanted to have societal pressures be very present in Anne's life, and we did that kind of through the internet. So you see there's an episode where Anna is reading some of the comments on her YouTube channel.
Why would you give up school for a guy? Don't get kidnapped in Europe? Have you seen Taken?
Anna feels pressure from her family, from society, from everything around her to go to school. Fred doesn't feel the same pressure. He doesn't want to go to school right after graduating high school. Instead, what he wants to do is go out and travel the world.
We're going to climb Machu Picchu, see Petra in Jordan, Halong Bay in Vietnam. We'll meet your family in Argentina.
Stop that!
Stop what?
Tempting me when there's school and money. And my dad.
People take gap years all the time.
I don't think my dad believes in gap years.
I don't think that Anna doesn't want to do that. I think she does want to do that as well. She just has a different view of the world than Fred does. But for Anna specifically, there's also the added pressure that she's the daughter of an immigrant, and that comes with its own pressures. I myself have been through that. I am Latina. There are certain things, especially being the eldest daughter, there are certain things that you unconsciously take in that you don't realize, but are pressures that society and your family have put on you. And I grew up with this idea of I had to go to school, I had to make something out of my life, because otherwise, what were all the sacrifices for?
My family has worked really hard, and my dad would never...
Don't blame this on them. You can make your own decisions.
I don't think that's a bad thing necessarily, but in many ways, it can also not be a good thing. So there's a lot that Anna has on her that Fred isn't even aware of. And it really comes back to the crux of they weren't communicating with each other. And we see that throughout the entirety of all the vlogs. There's always a little bit of miscommunication. They love each other deeply, but they're not really telling each other the truth, the full truth. And for that to happen, self-actualization has to happen, which happens throughout the present day timeline in the show. There's also the added element that Marisol has just been diagnosed.
I have juvenile idiopathic arthritis.
So I think Anna feels a responsibility to her sister and to her family to be there, especially with her mom not really being in the picture. She's the eldest daughter.
Anna makes all the phone calls to the insurance company, which takes forever because Papi doesn't like being on hold.
Well, I'm happy to do it.
Yeah. We all know you're a perfect angel.
So all of this kind of culminates into her having this decision to make that to Fred is so easy. It's pick what you want to pick, not what you think you have to pick. Whereas Anna doesn't see it that way. Anna says, I have to make this decision. I don't have another choice. And Fred doesn't understand that. And so that kind of is the core of their miscommunication that leads to their eventual breakup.
Anne Elliot is a really, quiet, kind of reserved, introspective character, and you don't really get to hear her talk about what she actually thinks. It was a challenge to figure out how we could get inside Anne Elliot's head, in our case Anna, and see what she was really thinking.
One of the first ways we found was actually to have her talking to her sister's dogs, Lady and Russell.
I'm over it now, and I'm totally fine with him living there and everyone listening to his stories and getting to know. Oh my God, I'm talking to a dog.
We found that was an effective way to get some of the thoughts out of her head by having her just kind of venting to them, because it was things that she probably wouldn't say to a human, but a dog's not going to tell her secrets, right?
Another strategy that we used was using text messages for the characters to communicate not only with each other, but sometimes some of their inner thoughts as well. And as a fellow millennial myself, I can say that sometimes we'd rather write things out rather than say them out loud.
We're also incredibly lucky to have Kristina as a main actress who can just portray so much of just a look. Her face acting is truly off the charts, which is just what you need for an Anne Elliot figure. She joins the great history of Anne Elliot actresses.
And lastly are Anna's video blogs.
The idea is she used to make video diaries for the internet. And like a lot of teens, she was a little bit naive, a little more open. So we get to know her younger self through these vlogs, which is interesting juxtaposed with adult Anna.
To our knowledge, we are the only Persuasion adaptation that's really done a deep dive into the Anne and Wentworth, or in our case, Anna and Fred, backstory by doing the vlog episodes of them in high school and slowly showing you, this is what their relationship was like, this is how great they were together, and here's how it fell apart. We just gave the audience, we felt like, a lot more insight into who they are as characters in present day and also just like what happened. Plus, it was a lot of fun to do the 2010s high school setting. The characters are about the same age as we are, so we pulled up a lot of high school pictures from our archives to remind ourselves, like, oh, this is what we wore, this is what the decorations behind us would have been like, these were the YouTube videos we were referencing.
I'm on a boat!
So those were a lot of fun to film, while also giving you some extra character insight that you don't get in any other version as far as we know.
There are two timelines in Rational Creatures. One is the present day, what you're seeing happen in a more cinematic style, and the other are the flashback vlogs. The present day is culminating into Anna and Fred finally getting back together, and the past tense is explaining to you why they were separated in the first place. That breakup episode was really hard to write. It was one thing that really took us a long time to get through. Many versions of the script were used, and there were a lot of things that needed to be done in that one scene. You needed it to be a really messy breakup, because if it was a healthy, non-toxic breakup, then why would they still not be getting over it? We really wanted it to end in a really dramatic way that would lead them to still be thinking about it years later. We also wanted it to be a clear indication of their miscommunication, because they need to be in polar opposite sides. They're propelled into very different futures. So for Anna, she encloses herself. She does what she has to do. She becomes even more selfless than she was, whereas Fred becomes very, very much the opposite. Fred is, I'm not going to let anyone come into my heart anymore. I'm going to build these walls around, and I'm going to act the way I want to act, because that's the easiest thing for me to do. And both have to go through their journeys to kind of crack some of those walls, to become better people, to kind of become grown in themselves in order to come back together. So for Fred, he has to go through this relationship with Ruiz, which he doesn't really understand is slowly going to be changing him, because he's never really done that. He's never really gotten back into what a quote-unquote serious relationship. So I think when he starts a relationship with Ruiz, he doesn't realize that that's what Ruiz is expecting. In his mind, even though he's not consciously saying it's a fling, I think that's all he knows since Anna. So he doesn't really understand any of this middle section.
I like to go out and have fun wherever I am. Go with the flow,
He slowly has to peel those things away, and eventually that leads to his breakup with Ruiz, because Ruiz is like, yo, I don't deserve this. I don't know what's going on with you. Fred has to kind of do some inward thinking and healing, and so he goes to therapy. He does these things to kind of reach self-actualization by the end of the show. Anna goes through a similar process, and she kind of has to butt heads with people throughout the show, like her sister, in order to realize, hey, I need to do some things for myself. I'm no longer in the spot I was in high school. I can make an educated decision about myself because I am an adult. And that's what she does. She decides to go back to grad school. She decides to get back together with Fred, and hopefully that leads to good things for both of them.
Obviously, we were going to include the letter. Everyone knows the letter from Persuasion. The main challenge was figuring out how to do it in a way that felt like natural to today's language, because as beautiful as the letter is, it contains a lot of language that we don't really use commonly right now.
The letter in Persuasion is legendary, known as one of the most romantic letters in the English language.
Unjust I may have been, weak and resentful I have been, but never inconstant.
In the book, it's not just that brings them together. Frederick and Anne are held back by, the conventions of society from talking to each other and expressing their feelings. But they manage to get it out anyway. Anne expresses how she feels through a conversation with Captain Harville, when talking about couples who are away for a long time and, still stay in love, so ever constant. Whilst this is happening, Frederick is recording his feelings in the letter. It's kind of come together to create this great moment. We wanted to recapture that, but also show a bit of Anna's growth and give her a bit of agency, which is why we have some of the lines in the letter in her song.
Yeah, for me, it's none but you.
She's kind of trapped by convention because she used to keep singing even when Fred's leaving. But she gets to say exactly what she wants to say and really show how her confidence has bloomed throughout the series. Meanwhile, we have an actual physical letter, because what's more romantic? Fred's writing this because Anna's singing, but he needs to express himself and he also needs to go. Trying to follow the kind of structure of the original letter as much as we could, while working in things that people would actually say nowadays.
I wish I could describe how I feel about you. You pierce my soul.
When it comes to the letter, all of those writers had a go, I think, and then edited each other's and merged them together in some kind of Frankenstein, which I hope works quite well. When it comes to the original song, that's something I started writing years and years ago when we first began the series. When it came to actually shooting, Kristina had some edits, which made it so much better, and she was able to give a fantastic performance we all really enjoyed.
At first glance, you might think that Anna and Fred are a straight couple, but they're both bisexual. Fred was actually one of the first characters that we queered.
You sure do get around, don't you?
Are you calling me a bisexual stereotype?
No.
There's a dearth of bi men characters in media, really bi characters in general. I don't think you see a lot of Austen leading men who are bi, so that's something we wanted to challenge.
As you find out midway through the series, Ben is also bi. It's a whole cast of bisexuals, which makes me so happy.
I'm bi.
Oh, I mean, like, me too. I mean, not that I actually date anyone.
Smart move.
It was really important to us to show the wide range of experiences you can have as a queer person, whether you're like me and in a, on the surface, heterosexual relationship but bisexual, or whether you date loads of people of different genders, whether you never date, whether, you know, you're a one relationship at a time kind of person. Particularly when it comes to bisexuals, there tend to be, you know, some kind of stock examples of how they're shown on screen. We wanted to really expand that.
Something that is also somewhat unique about our version of Persuasion is that we wanted to really flesh out the Louisa and Bennick or Lewis and Ben arc. I think that became a lot of fans and maybe some of us creators' favorite relationship in the show, actually. It's roommates to lovers, it's pining. It's just something that's not very explored in the book. It kind of happens off page, so to speak, that Louisa and Bennick are just suddenly like, okay, we're getting married. So we had a lot of fun making that into like more of a whole arc, using it against the Fred and Lewis relationship, really showing that like Fred and Lewis don't work very well. They're not healthy together. They're not encouraging each other to be their best selves. They're clearly encouraging bad patterns in each other. We really felt like Ben and Lewis and eventually Anna and Fred become more pairs that you can root for. Like, this is something that could be a long-term, healthy, loving relationship as opposed to something that they're just kind of using to distract themselves from other problems in their lives.
When is your class again?
It's a lecture, and they don't even take attendance, so...
We got to spend quite a bit of time with Ben pining while Lewis is clueless because he's wrapped up in this Fred thing, kind of looking to Fred, I think, for a certain kind of like self-worth, that he's not feeling confident in himself, but he's like, wow, this famous guy likes me, so I must be something special. And then I think Lewis ends up having this really great journey of realizing he's not being true to himself. That's not what he wants in a relationship, and I think that his arc ended up being really sweet. It was fun to do kind of a somewhat slow burn with them, starting with these moments of tension where I think Ben is clearly smitten, but Lewis doesn't realize what's happening because he's just like caught up in other things, and then have him slowly be like, oh, wait a minute. I do have feelings for him. I think that's really solidified in the concert episode. That's maybe one of my favorite episodes as far as it just came together really strongly with the lighting and the delightful song that Ben, the actor, wrote for Ben. Lewis, you know, I think having some realizations during that song, although I think he's starting to figure things out before then. And then, of course, the kiss in the by lighting. I am so proud of it. It's so beautiful with the star background, and I think the song fits it really well, and I'm just really happy with how all of that came out. I think it's, they're very shippable.
We also have an aromantic character in the shape of Sophie Wentworth. In the novel, Sophia and the Admiral kind of showcase a really loving, affectionate relationship where one half the couple's in the Navy and they travel together and have a really rewarding life. In the book, Sophia and the Admiral were really important role models of a naval relationship, of a loving marriage, of, you know, a woman who's travelled widely and is really friendly and comfortable in herself. We wanted to show something of that in the series, but instead of having Sophie as like something to aspire to romantically, you already kind of have that with Marisol and Charlie. In our version, we have Anna looking up to Sophie as, you know, a woman who's really confident in herself, who has a career path she's really passionate about.
You know, I've actually been thinking about going back to school, maybe. Not for astrophysics.
Oh yeah? What are you thinking?
I don't know. Maybe counseling, or... I have no idea.
Well, I'm here if you need any advice.
In just generally building a really good, satisfying life for herself, whether she's coupled or not. Sophie's arc is that she's been feeling really lonely because, as with a lot of people on the AO spectrum, you know, people around you tend to kind of pair off and prioritise each other a little bit.
When I first figured out I was aromantic, I had all these really close friends, so the future never really looked that lonely. And now everyone's kind of paired off and scattered.
Which can be really hard when friendship and platonic feelings is like the highest level of attraction and relationships for you. We show Sophie reconnecting with her brother and finding a newfound family who, you know, she can carry on having a lot of fun times with while she continues her exciting career. You don't see many people on the AO spectrum in media, which I think is a real shame because, you know, we're everywhere.
Charles and Mary are a very different couple than they are in our version. We really wanted to make them a happy queer couple, and we wanted to really, again, it's an opportunity for us to reflect the society around us. So although there are people in our lives in their 20s that do have children, this is a couple that lives in the city, and the city is expensive, and they're looking to buy a home. More people that I know like that don't have children quite yet. They're dog parents. I myself am a dog parent. So we wanted to kind of reflect that, and we were able to do that through them.
And it has a yard, which is like gold dust in this area. Gold dust.
It'll be so good for the dogs. We're thinking of getting another one.
Well, maybe in like a year. We are so broke.
The fact that they do have a goal is really important to us as well. You see them from the beginning of the show really working towards that goal of home ownership. This is something that a lot of millennials are striving for, and right now it doesn't really seem possible for many. So the fact that they are able to achieve that goal by the end of the series is really special.
A character that we changed quite a bit from the novel is Marisol, or originally Mary Musgrove. In the book, she's really this overdramatic hypochondriac. She's always, kind of faking health problems, or at least making them much more dramatic than they are, kind of to get out of things she doesn't want to do. And she's mostly kind of used for comic relief more than anything else in the book. So we kind of decided we wanted to subvert that and have, instead of her making up health things or using them as an excuse, she genuinely has a chronic illness. She's dealing with arthritis, so we actually see some of how that's affecting her life, but it's also not the defining trait of her life. So we just wanted to touch on that because it's such a common occurrence in real life, but something that you don't see in media a whole lot. And especially in real life and sometimes in media, people with chronic illnesses are not taken seriously. So instead of this kind of Mary being the boy who cried wolf kind of thing, we were like, what if she has an invisible illness and people genuinely don't take her seriously?
Yeah, funny how chronic illness is chronic, isn't it?
Sorry, I didn't mean to...
It's fine. Just don't tell me to start some all potato diet or magical tincture made with a random herb that'll cure me and... we're good.
We also see her as a wife, as a dog mom, as a sister. We made quite a few changes really to the dynamic of her with some of the other characters, especially with Anna. We gave her a few of Lady Russell's traits in that she is often one of the voices in the show that is trying to persuade Anna.
You're miserable working for Papi. I know that you want other things.
You have no idea what I want.
By the end, she realizes that while she was well-intentioned, she was actually not helping Anna actually get to a place where she was making her own decisions for her own wants and needs.
I just wish she would stand up for herself a little more.
She did, just to the wrong person.
Gabby was one of our additions that immediately I was like, I want her as Marisol. She is perfect. She just was really strong in all of her scenes.
Another difference from the novel is that Louisa becomes Louis, and instead of falling off a wall in Lyme and experiencing a head injury, Louis has a panic attack. And we really, again, wanted to differentiate ourselves a little bit from the book by giving a realistic version of what it could be like in modern day. I, for example, have anxiety. It's something I live with on a daily basis. In the novel, Louisa is trying to be silly, trying to impress Captain Wentworth. It's a little bit of a flirting thing. In our version, Louis has been avoiding a lot of the things he should be working on.
This is all my fault. I wasn't keeping up with my stuff. And I got distracted.
Not realizing that's probably causing anxiety in the back of his head, and then having this moment of, oh, he probably should have handed in that essay. Everyone watching is probably like, you definitely should have handed in that essay before getting into the car.
Damn it, I should have sent in my paper before we left. There's no service here.
But he didn't, because he was preoccupied with his relationship with Fred. He was putting things to the side. He really wanted to impress Fred and really wanted to be the boyfriend that he thought Fred needed or wanted. And so this moment of not being able to control what was going on and not being in a space with Wi-Fi, and it all kind of culminating into, oh my gosh, all these things that I've done may have led to me being expelled or losing my scholarship or whatever the case may be, failing that class, really kind of explodes in that moment. Him having anxiety is something that's hinted at throughout the series, and so that really is that culmination of all of that. But hopefully we hope that it's relatable to people as well, because sometimes people do lose themselves in relationships and people do live with anxiety. We hope that it's a realistic representation of that.
One thing that I love about this series is that there's 4 of us, and so we all bring different life experiences, and we all tried to add things from our own lives that we wanted to see in media, and so it ended up being pretty personal and reflections of who all of us are in different ways.
There are some things we're sad about, like having to cut so many Guillermo scenes. We wrote all these hilarious Guillermo scenes that we were really excited for the audience to watch, but our beloved actor Armando was not able to join us for season 2, so we had to find ways around that. And hopefully we did a good job. Hopefully you liked what we did, but we had the opportunity to kind of add in other characters to kind of fill in those gaps, which is actually a nice surprise. We welcomed Cooper into the cast in season 2, who played Elliot, which is Mr. Elliot's counterpart in the book. Elliot is a fun character to write for. He's a little bit annoying. He's a little bit too corporate for the cast of characters that we have created, but that's exactly what makes him kind of, interesting in the story, to kind of juxtapose the rest of the characters in the story.
Elliot Williams, professional party crasher.
Oh, hi, I'm Fred.
One of the characters that we were originally going to cut was actually Henrietta Musgrove, but when we saw Stephanie's audition, we just were like, oh my gosh, we have to have this person in our cast. And in doing so, we created this trio of siblings, the Musgrove siblings, and that's a really special bond that was created not only on screen, but also off screen with the actors as well.
Sibling PDA and comedic managership!
Of course, time and budget meant we had to cut a few plot lines and characters. I am deeply sad that we lost Miss Smith. She's one of my favourite characters in the book. We lost one of the Elliot sisters. We lost the Darien Pauls. I don't think anyone misses them. But yeah, these are all things we have to do to streamline the plot a little bit and really stick closely to the themes that we chose to explore, as well as doing justice to the characters that we chose, so we could really give everyone a satisfying interior plot, as well as being part of, the great romance of the story. Despite everything we had to cut and change, it really gave us the opportunity to deepen the relationships that we did see on the screen. We just get to see everyone as an ensemble, which I think is an exciting way to do things on screen and a fun way to do a rom-com.
So we had just finished our season 2 crowdfunding campaign in February of 2020, and we all know what happened around that time. Not only were we delayed in filming, but that also gave us the opportunity to sit down with the script and revise, and that was really valuable because there's a lot that we still needed to refine and work on. Because of the pandemic and all of the time restrictions, budget restrictions that we then had to deal with that were unprecedented, we did have to rework some of the story elements because there's only so many group scenes you can have, and as we know, Austen loves to have a bunch of people in a room, and we do too, but unfortunately, it's not always practical for budget and scheduling.
So during the pandemic, we weren't able to fully get together to film everything all at once as we had originally planned. So we ended up splitting it into 3 different chunks. One over the summer with Kristina, Peter, and Kat. Another in Chicago with most of the cast except for Peter and Kristina. And then a final one. Hazel and I were able to join for the 3rd film shoot in our season 2 filming, which was really exciting. And it was a way for us to finally all be together while filming this project we've been working on for so long.
But because we were a multinational team to begin with, the pandemic didn't really change how we work together on a daily basis. We're still doing Zoom meetings, although we probably switched from Skype to Zoom because everyone was on Zoom at that point. But yeah, we were already doing everything virtually anyway.
Something really cool about this project was that it was very much made possible by the magic of internet community. We all met through the literary inspired web series community. Different people were looking for writers for their shows. We would have Zoom meetups together to talk about shows. We were interviewed on each other's podcasts. We were making GIFs for each other's shows. All these things that were really wonderful parts of online Austen community, and specifically that web series community that has continued as the show has continued. Even though the literary web series community is a lot smaller, we really would not have been able to make this show without online community. The fact that we were able to crowdfund it with I think something like 200 people supporting the show, we never would have been able to do it without that. So we've been really grateful. The internet can be terrible, social media can be terrible, but I think this show is a reflection of the best of it when people can come together and make art together and have conversations about what they like and what they see of themselves in it. Yeah, so we were really grateful for the power of community, and especially online community and fandom, coming together and giving us the ability to breathe new life into a timeless classic like Persuasion.
You can watch Rational Creatures on YouTube right now for free.
And maybe when you watched it, you could let us know what you think. We really love feedback, no matter what it is. And we're on Instagram and Twitter and TikTok and Tumblr and basically anywhere you would think to communicate with us. We really hope you enjoyed the sneak peek into our process and how we went about changing Persuasion into Rational Creatures.